think further from any of the trustees?
Can I just say?
Trustee Sussman?
I also would agree with Ben that the question, obviously the question before us legally is whether or not we should postpone, can people hear me, whether or not we should postpone this until after the November referendum, and I would agree that we should do it. Again, I would say that what I'm going to say right now really isn't about the vote or not, but I feel that I need to respond to some of the comments that have been made by my fellow trustees here. I actually think that even if we put the issue of the money and the levy aside, the discussion that's going on and the discussion among the trustees is a very good example of why our foremothers, our forefathers voted in favor of the establishment of a board in 1937. And that's because they recognize, I think, one of the reasons, that there was going to be a natural tension between Parks and Rec and other organizations in the village, and that natural tension might actually come to a head over financial situations. That this board was established to make sure Rec, that has actually a different constituency than the other departments, is well represented and is well managed. I think that the referendum demonstrated that at the time in 1937, and certainly the signatures now demonstrated that there's a belief that there has to be checks and balances because of the different uses of our parks and because of the different uses within the village, and that this check and balance, this healthy tension, maybe it's not so healthy tonight, but it usually is a healthy tension, it needs to be upheld through this board. So that's one reason. We all know that the levy is the levy. But I do think that that's a very important reason why there's this check and balance, and it's the board.
Then I might ask the question.
Would we let you finish? Could you?
I thought you were done.
No, I'm not finished. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Jim, but I got a few more things to say. I was teasing you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that to sound rude. Then there have been many mentions by Mr. Gorman and Mr. Sacchi, and you just now, Jim, about this issue of efficiency, and actually, Mr. Gorman, you mentioned at the last meeting flexibility. And I find that very curious because I haven't heard anything specific. And as most of us like to think now we have some finance background, Lonnie, and Kevin's over here, or some economics background, the definition of efficiency is very specific. It looks at the inputs that go in for a specific output. So I've heard you were asked many times by people in the audience, what is this efficiency that we're talking about? And I haven't heard anything specific, and I'm asking this because I'd like to know. I'd like to know what you're talking about. Are you thinking that per $100 spent, somehow the management of the Parks and Rec system will be quote unquote more efficient, will get greater output from it? I mean, I don't really understand why we're using the word efficiency, and I see no proof. I've heard no proof, number one, that the Parks and Rec board is inefficient in the use of funds or in the use of personnel or whatever other term of efficiency, technology. There are all sorts of ways of defining efficiency. It's never been as defined here. I don't see any indication that they're inefficient. I don't see any indication that the village manager's oversight, which has gone on over these years, this board does not act by itself, is causing any kind of inefficiencies. If you think that, then I think we need to be more specific. So that's a concern I have. And then I do want to say that I think that there's a question about governance here. And I have to say that I remain concerned, Lonnie, I've said this to you in person, about the way this proposal was developed, number one, with two people, without any of us, or at least I was never called and said, what's your opinion? Before it was developed, it didn't go to the rec board. I remain concerned about that. I'm not saying that there were more than two people involved. I just want to state that I am concerned about the way these kinds of proposals are developed. Mark, I would liken that to the parking proposal, where you did it yourself. I asked if I could help. You used your friends from your political party. That's fine, but it just makes me uneasy. So I think that that's a governance issue. I think it's a governance issue that it was presented as a recommendation from our village manager, when in fact it was not a recommendation from our village manager. And I also am concerned One of the reasons I'm also not in favor of this is that I'm concerned about this whole issue of micromanagement. And Mike, you used this term at the last meeting. Yeah, I think you said actually that you were elected to micromanage at this point in where our village is. And in fact, I don't think that's why you were elected. It certainly wasn't a campaign, certainly wasn't in your campaign that you should be elected so you can micromanage. And I do not believe that with the competent staff we have, that our village president should be saying that we need to micromanage the staff. I don't know if you meant it this way, but there's certainly a pejorative sense around the term micromanaging. It makes me very uncomfortable that we seem to be heading in a direction where we believe that the staff needs to be micromanaged. If there's an issue with the staff, we should talk about it. If there isn't, then we as trustees and Mr. Gorman, you as the village manager, or the village, excuse me, it's a slip, you as the village president, we should be setting direction. We should be planning. We should be giving guidance. We should not be telling the staff how to do their business. So for those reasons, I believe that I am concerned about governance. Thank you.